I'm Kevin, and I'm here to give you a little tour of a toy that I'm working on called Solarnet. Solarnet is a standalone open source library that implements a game engine for the game Terraforming Mars. This is just a library that another program could use. It's not an entire program, and it's not trying to be a playable game. If you are just wanting to play the game, you should be going to terraformingmars.herokuapp.com. They have a great implementation over there already. This codebase is unrelated to that. I'll say up front before we get into this that if you are not a software developer type person, you might find this whole thing confusing and maybe even pointless right now. In fact, probably most software developers will also find it confusing and pointless. But what can I say? I'm just showing you what I've got. It's very much still a work in progress, so do not expect to be impressed by what is already here, and try to look for the potential of where you think it might be able to go. So presumably you're a software person, and presumably you are interested in the game Terraforming Mars, or I expect you wouldn't have clicked on whatever you clicked on to get here. Now, a game engine library has only one purpose in the world, which is to know the rules of the game inside and out. It doesn't have to do anything else. It simply knows who can do what when, and it can tell you what happens if they do. So it's a very low-level component of a game. Okay, so what's the point of making a new game engine? After all, the app that I just showed you here already has an extremely accurate game engine inside it. And the commercial app that you can find for iOS or Steam also has a game engine as well. So do we really need a third one? Well, we don't really need a third one, but there is something new and different about what I'm trying to do here, which is that all the card behaviors and all the unique components of the game have their behaviors expressed in this language. So every time we want to add a card, we don't have to write actual code. We can just write this representation of the card. So for example, Electro Catapult has this plant or steel arrow 7, which you'll notice looks very similar to the icon language that the cards already use. And that is not a coincidence. I have tried to keep this language as close to being a textual representation of that icon language as I can for lots of reasons. So here we have five examples of cards, large convoy down to Earth Catapult here, and what the pets syntax. Yes, the language is called pets. Don't ask me why. There was a reason for it. It doesn't stand for anything, although if someone wants to come up with a retronym for it, go ahead and try. 5 examples of cards and what their pet's syntax looks like. And then standard projects are also represented this way. Even core components of the game, like a Terraform rating, has its behavior specified this way. For every Terraform rating that you have, the production phase causes it to generate 1 money, and the end of the game causes it to generate 1 victory point. So that is what's new and different about this game engine. It does work. I have 400 cards working. And I wanted to do this for Terraforming Mars because there is such a, what's the word they use? Vibrant. There's such a vibrant fan community that loves to make cards and maps and things like that. And this engine would let you, plug all of those in and then find out how the engine thinks that they would interact with other cards. Now, of course, it's pretty hard to demo a library, since a library is something that you only interact with by writing code, and that code might look something like this file here, which is an actual passing unit test right now that uses a card action, plays a new card, and sells some patents and all these things. And it verifies that all the values come out the way that is expected. In other words, if they come out the same as the web app, I take that as correct because the web app is extremely accurate. But again, not very demoable, really, and not very interactive. We really want something that we can fool around with and just like mess around and see what happens. So I created a command line UI for interacting with it. We're going to use that today, but I want to emphasize that this video is not a demo of this command line UI. The command line UI is terrible, and it's sort of intentionally terrible. I'm not putting any effort into this interface. It's not a tool you would ever want to actually use. It's just for, if you're doing stuff with the library, you want to mess around with it. I have to actually go into the directory. You want to mess around with it interactively. It will let you do that, but you do have to understand how to speak its language. The tool is basically just a playground that lets us set up game situations and then play cards and so forth and see what happens. So when we fire it up, it has already created a game and sort of started that game. But if we want to change those parameters, we can start a new game. So let's do one that includes base, corporate era, let's say the Elysium map, Prelude, and Venus, and let's have 3 players for the game. So it did that. And let's also just set our perspective to player 1 so that we can do things like say, count Terraform rating. And it will tell us there are 20 instances of this Terraform rating object. Or we could say count mega credit. And there are no mega credits because I have not played a corporation yet. So of course there are none. For convenience, this command line interface here has a couple of commands that begin with TFM_, which are conveniences specific to Terraforming Mars, whereas the engine is actually it's actually quite generic. It doesn't, like, the engine doesn't know anything about greenery tiles or mega credits or even victory points. It only knows what that PETS language tells it. But for convenience, I did add a few of these TFM commands. This shows you what is currently on the character. I've been playing too many role-playing games. What the player's board looks like. So in this mode, which is the green mode, the deal with green mode is it's a playground where you can initiate any action that you want to. Actually, I shouldn't even say action. You can initiate any state change in the game that you want to. For example, maybe we would like to have 600 money. So we just execute a command that says 600 and it gives it to us. And so now if we look at our board, we have 600 money. It'll let us do whatever we want. We can mess around. But it does trigger all the consequences of what you tell it to do. So for example, if I tell it to add 1 instance of temperature step, in other words, to raise the temperature from -30 to -28, it will do that. And it also knows that it should give me a Terraform rating in response. And this is a good example of how the inner engine is very generic and thinks in terms of instances of components. It does not know that the temperature was -30 and that it changed to -28. It just knows that there were no temperature steps that had been created yet, and then one was. A user interface or some layer in between would have to convert between those different representations. But as far as this engine is concerned, it doesn't care. So it knew to trigger a Terraform rating if we were to become player 2, and let's say we add 2 more temperature steps. Actually, let's add 3 more. It adds the 3 temperature steps. The first 2 generate Terraform rating. The third one also generates Terraform rating, but it also creates a heat production for player 2, which, as you know from the game, when you get up to -24, there's a bonus there. Now, these strings here are not highly readable. I just want to emphasize again that this is not trying to be a very fun UI to use. It is showing you things in the language as the engine thinks of these things. So now if I look at player 2's board, well, it still doesn't have any money or anything like that, but it does have 23. Why 23? Oh yeah, we did do all of this as player 2, didn't we? Oh, right. Okay, because we added 3. Okay, right. All right, so that's correct. That's as it should be. And here's another example. Like, let's say, okay, another one of these special commands that I added just for convenience while working on this game is TFM map, which shows a very amazing, awesome representation of the map. This is the Elysium board, which you may recognize for having these water spaces around here and this amazing 3-card spot up here. We are in playground mode, so if we want to just add a greenery tile anywhere we want to the board, it'll just let us do it. So remember, in green mode, you can initiate whatever you want, but then you will get the consequences of what you did. So if we create a single greenery tile, this will show a chain reaction effect. It created the tile. Then, so it created the tile as event 2441. Because of that event, then the greenery tile itself added an oxygen step. And then because of that event, the oxygen step added a terraform rating. So it handles all of these effects, and it does so based on, again, this custom language that I've been alluding to. So let's open that up. Let's see, what do I want to go to? Player, maybe. Yeah. All right, so greenery tile. Where's the greenery tile? Oh, maybe I'm in the wrong file. Yeah, right, it's in tiles. Okay, sorry. Again, this is a language that is developed specifically for Terraforming Mars to make it possible to express Terraforming Mars rules and effects in a very concise way that is close to the language used on the cards. And that's really kind of like the design goal, is keep it looking similar to the card icon language. But as far as the greenery tile goes, where is it? Okay, it's down here. Right here. Okay. It is a subclass of tile. In fact, it is a subclass of tile on Mars area, because you are never going to put a greenery tile out in space. This is some gobbledygook. This is some long, confusing stuff I'm not going to talk about. But this is where it expresses those effects. When this instance is created, then that triggers creating an oxygen step. So whatever you think of as an immediate effect of creating a component is expressed with this colon. And then the end of the game causes that same greenery tile to generate a victory point. Let's look at some cards. I didn't really plan out which cards we should look at, so let's just roll the dice and see what we get. Release of inert gases is a simple one. It has some attributes like what bundle it belongs to and what its cost is, but its behavior expressed in pets is very, very simple. It's just 2 terraform rating. Then nitrogen-rich asteroid is an example of a more complex one. It has a prod box, and then inside the prod box, it says it's either going to give you a plant production, or it has this conditional effect right here. If you have 3 plant tags, then it gives you 4 plant production instead. Thing to emphasize here is just, again, how much it's made to resemble the icon language, because I would love to see a future where we're able to, here, let's pull up nitrogen rich up here. Oh, that's not going to be easy to find. I'll just search for it. Okay, nitrogen rich. It looks like this. There's no theoretical reason why a presentation like this couldn't be derived from this text. And I've tried to keep the text that way, as though we're going to generate images from it. We might never do that, but the appeal of it to me is that it would be fun if every card behaves exactly the way it appears to behave, because it has to. It wouldn't have any way of doing anything differently. There'd be a whole class of bugs that could never happen. In other words, if the card had the wrong behavior, it would also show the wrong behavior on the card, and the player would be like, wait a minute, what's going on here? The types that can be triggered off of are actually generic types. this says a city tile by anyone will generate 2 money, which is rover construction. Actually, the way that player parameters work is backwards to everything else to match the way that the cards work, which is that if you just say city tile, it assumes you mean by the same player. And you have to explicitly say a parameter, anyone, if you want to generalize that up to any player. There's a way in the game language that is expressed, and it's there because, again, we want to match the icon language. So, okay, let's see. Let's pull up large convoy. I want to show another salient piece of information about the engine. Okay, so large convoy looks like this. It has all these effects. Okay, that sounds like other things that we've done that have had effects. So let's suppose that let's create pets first. Notice, by the way, when we say exec pets, it doesn't make us pay for it. Because again, we're in this playground mode that says, hey, what if I had this card? And so this is what you would use if you're trying to test a certain situation. You just want to conjure up a certain game state, but you don't want to deal with really playing out all of those things because that's not what you're really trying to do. If we did want to be charged for the pets card for some reason, I think there's a convenience in here called TFM Play that does the whole process. In any case, we just gave ourselves a pet card, and now we're going to just give ourselves a large convoy card for free. And now you'll see something different, which is that it was able to do a bunch of things for us. It created the large convoy itself, gave us an earth tag, gave us a space tag, took away the earth tag and the space tag because this is an event card. With an event card, you temporarily have those tags, but then they get taken away at the end. It actually it removes the large convoy instance and creates a played event instance instead. That's that flipping I was talking about. But then, okay, the interesting part, it knows to give you 2 project cards, but it doesn't know how to fulfill the other instructions because it doesn't know where you want to place the ocean tile, and it doesn't know which thing you want to choose here. So it just puts those on a task queue for you. And a task queue is operations that you have been authorized to complete, and in fact that you must complete. You can't sort of get the engine back into a neutral state again where it will handle the next command until you clear that task queue. So we have to basically narrow these tasks. So let's say task E, let's see what happens if we try to narrow it to 4 animal of player 2. I actually don't know whether this will work or not. It didn't, and the probable reason let me see if the task went away. The probable reason is that I didn't tell it which card to play it on. That doesn't seem quite right, that just nothing happened. Let's see if this fixes it. Yeah, by telling it what card, it did play it. I wasn't sure what it would do because at some point I'm trying to add the feature where if you only have 1 card that you could play it on, it will do that automatically. But right now that's not working yet. So I took care of one of the tasks, and now I have to take care of the other by putting that ocean tile on a water area. So, in the playground mode, anything I initiate, I can just do whatever I want. But on the task queue, sometimes the tasks specify certain restrictions like water area, and I can only narrow this type that's given here. I can't put an ocean tile on, say, coordinate 1,5 up here. So let's say I want to put it on 4,6. So I do task C, ocean tile on 4,6. And that should take care of it. Now my task queue is empty, and now I can do the next thing. So the engine has this whole concept of these complex types like ocean tile on Elysium 4.6. The deal with the engine, the way the engine thinks and the language it speaks is that we have complex nouns, but we have simple verbs. So by the time you have a noun that can express a full concept like an ocean tile on a particular space of the board, then all that the only verbs we really need are add some number of this, subtract some number of this, or count how many of this there are, which, by the way, we can do. We can say count tile. There are 2 tiles in existence. We could count, let's see, let's count Mars areas. There had better be 61 of these. All these areas on the board are components themselves. Everything's a component, basically. And the whole engine works off of this idea that there's this space in which instances of various objects exist. What else is going to be interesting to show here? I mean, if I list who are all the any ones, well, they're all owners. If I list all the owners, that's interesting. Okay, bug, whatever. I'll fix that someday. What else is interesting here? I mentioned the modes a little bit. We're in green mode right now. I mentioned what that means. Initiate anything you want, but you do have to obey those tasks before you can start something new. If we, the modes are, in rainbow order. If we go down a mode to mode blue, this is actually, is that down or up? It's up a mode because it's higher level. So the higher up you go towards purple, the more it limits you to only correct things that could actually happen in the game. And the lower you go, like down to mode red, is like anything goes. In mode red, you can just like do things without even triggering anything. Like let's create 10 temperature steps. And they did not trigger terraform ratings to happen. But in mode blue, in this case, what it does is the only thing you can initiate is to say, hey, give me a turn, please. Let's become player 1. And then let's say, give me a turn. I think I do turn. No. How do I do that? Maybe as engine turn. I forgot how I did this. It's funny. Begin a new turn for the current player. How'd I mess that up? Well, one of the effects of being the only person working on this right now is that sometimes I break things and I don't notice. In any case, what it should do is create, it should do something like new turn. This might not work either, not allowed in this mode. We should be able to do that. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. I figured it out. All right. I understand. Okay, here's what happened. You don't actually have turns in the setup phase, and we are currently in the setup phase. What a turn means is dictated by what phase you're in. So if we list the current phases that are active, there's one called setup phase. Phase, it's a component like any other, but it has a restriction that says there can only be one phase at a time. So let me just show what that looks like. Probably in global. Do we have phases here? Yeah, we do. So phase has this predicate, has equal one phase, which means at all times there is exactly one phase. Oh, there's even a comment saying here that I don't even know why this works, but it does. And so in order to create a corporation phase, I will have to remove the setup phase. And right now, in the UI, that's a huge pain. We have to do something like as engine exec corporation phase from setup phase. When we write tests, I have convenience features for making that easier. So what it does is it just gives everyone a corporation card, which then they will play from their hand. I realize that officially you get a number of them and you choose one. And maybe that's a segue for me to talk a bit about one of the other limitations of this engine, which is that, well, just to illustrate this, okay, I'm still player 1. I can just say like, TFM play Manutech. That didn't work. Okay, right. Let's just exec. So the point is that nothing in the engine keeps track of what cards are in players' hands. It just knows that a player has like 5 cards. And if the player says, I'm playing, Earth Catapult, it'll say, oh, okay, cool, you're playing Earth Catapult. That's because the engine isn't really trying to be a playable game. You only need that randomization if you're trying to play the game. The engine is more for testing specific scenarios, in which case you know what card you want it to play. So there is a feature request about adding that whole mode of keeping track of what all the cards are even before they're played, but that actually will take a lot of work. So it's been postponed. Where was I originally going with this? I guess the point is that now that we're in the corporation phase, we should be able to go to blue mode and say just turn. And now it worked. So because there's a phase active, like let's look back here. Corporation phase knows that in response to the new turn signal, it should give them an abstract instruction to play a corporation card, and it should give them this question mark instruction. Question mark is a quantifier that means that any amount of this is optional. So the person can do anywhere from 0 up to 10 by card operations. That's what the question mark means. But in later phases, we have a turn means something different. Like in the action phase, it means either you're going to use a standard action or you're going to pass. So now that we've done that correctly, player 1 has asked for a turn. The deal with blue mode is that you can ask to start a turn. Any player can say, hey, it's my turn at any time. But then you will be limited to playing out the consequences of that turn. So I will not be able to just give myself 100 money. Sometimes you don't get a pretty error message. Eventually, these would all be prettied up, but sometimes you get a stack trace right now. The player will be able to, they won't be able to say, I want to execute task C by doing 11 by card. It will not let them do that. They can only do up to 10. And it shouldn't let them do that right now either, because they have no money. Or do they? Oh, this is player 1 that we gave all the money to. Maybe I should have started anew. Whoops. No. New game. Corporation phase. This stuff is rough around the edges. I don't pretend that it isn't. Let's become player 1. Let us go back into blue mode. Now let's ask for a turn. The thing we forgot to do is we forgot to notice that exec corporation phase gave us an error. So we're going to go back to green mode. We're going to go back to green mode. We're going to say exec corporation phase from setup phase. So again, the UI here, not trying to be easy to use. It is trying to let you speak the engine's language, and the engine doesn't have the goal of being easy to use. A real game built around it would have a layer that translates to more game-specific concepts. Okay, so now we started the phase correctly. Now, if I'm not forgetting something again, we should be able to ask for a turn, and we did indeed. Now we can, I think maybe this is where we can TFM play. Let's see. Actually, it's been a few weeks since I was working on this, so I have forgotten a few things. That worked. Okay, so it gave me a Manutech, which is like a copy of Manutech sitting face up on the table, gave me a building tag, gave me a steel production, gave me 35 money, and then it even gave me a steel because that was triggered by Manutech's own effect. I think that's probably enough of a demo for now. playing around with this is supposed to be as easy as cloning the repo, going into the directory and typing ./rego, and then you can type help. But of course, as a Gradle project, Gradle builds are not hermetic. It will probably fail for you for some reason that I have no idea, because it doesn't fail for me. So I would really like you, if it doesn't work for you, to hop on our Discord. Hey, segue. Hop on our Discord and tell us about that. On the Solarnet GitHub page, which is GitHub Martian Zoo Solarnet, somewhere it begs you to join the Discord, maybe. Anyway, there's a number of things you can do here. I don't know where I put the Discord. There it is. Join the Discord. Please do. There's like no one on it yet. Like no one is using it. I guess I have not really advertised the existence of this thing at all. The more, if you want to play around with this, but you don't want to come in and ask questions, you'll probably have a miserable experience right now. You might want to wait another year, until this is more polished. But if you are willing to ask questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. And I'm even more than willing to, video conference with you and show you around, or have us work on stuff together. That is the stage that this project is in. It has really been a one-person project since the beginning. There's some other links here you can check out if you want. But let us end the demo here. Thanks for your attention.